everyone. Welcome to this episode of Ecoffee with Experts. I am your host, Matt Fraser, and today on the show, I have with me Edward Coram James. Now, Edward is the chief executive of Go Up Ltd, an international agency producing outstanding digital marketing results for its global clientele. He is skilled in all aspects of SEO, including content marketing, SEO copywriting, technical SEO analytics, and more. When not wearing his marketing hat and CEO hat, he enjoys spending time with his dogs and surfing. Ed, thanks for coming to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Right on. So, who were you as a kid growing up? You've had a very interesting journey so far.
Gosh.
And so this whole thing of having two, you have an office in the UK, and for those of you who don't know, he has an office in California. But who was Ed, growing up?
That's such an interesting question. I think Ed growing up was kind of quite similar to Ed of being a grown up, which is kind of a number of different things. I was brought up in a very privileged background, but it was interesting because this is, going quite straight in there straight away. The kind of privilege largely came from my step family.
Okay.
My parents got divorced when I was younger, and my step family are kind of, very wonderful, incredible human beings. Clearly, but they were kind of very, upper class English.
Okay.
And so I was sent to kind of the best boarding schools in the UK. But I was always kind of the slight odd one out, like in Latin. We had this teacher called Mr. Cooper, and he just knew that Latin wasn't for me. And so, we're talking, I must have been 10. And so I'd sit at the back of the classroom and I'd write poetry. And he'd kind of let me do that while he was teaching everyone Latin and everyone else was reciting a Mat and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was this kid kind of living in this world of extraordinary privilege, but who never felt really like he fit into that scenario, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. I can relate.
And so when I was, poetry was my thing. And when I was 13, so the house I grew up in was this house called Burnt Norton, which for any poetry aficionados out there, T.S. Eliot, who's one of the great sort of US, UK poets of all time. And one of his seminal poems is Burnt Norton, because in the sort of 30s, he came to our house and trespassed and wrote a poem about it. And when I was about 13, some professors from Stanford University in California just turned up on our doorstep and knocked on the door.
Oh, wow.
And, I opened it and I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm Professor Namphy from Stanford. Can I come and have a look around?" And she was with this guy called John Espedel, who was another Stanford chap. And I showed them around. And as we got talking, I said, I write poetry. And I showed her some. And then about a month later, she showed up with a whole bunch of professors from Stanford,
unannounced and uninvited?
No. Well, I didn't know. My mum had been announced this time, but about 4 days earlier into my mum, and I had no idea about. It was this lady called Professor Diane Middlebrook, and then a guy called Carl Dedrassi, who. He's this incredible chemist. He invented the birth control pill, which is obviously controversial in some places and not in others. But and then Kathleen Namphy again and John Espedel again, and they said, "Listen, you should come to Stanford." And so I was like, "Well, gosh, okay." And so they kind of said, "Listen, we'll get you a scholarship." And so the next thing I know, I'm flying out to California, and I'm a wee lad who barely left England, certainly not left Europe before, and I kind of grew this love affair with California. But then and that kind of became a really big defining part of my life. And then when I was 17, that whole thing just started to unravel. So Kathleen, Professor Namphy, was tragically killed when she was in Iran. And then very shortly thereafter, Professor Middlebrook, Diane, became terminally ill. And it all kind of started to unravel. And all of a sudden, I kind of spent years building up to, this kind of thing of, I'm going to Stanford and I'm going on a scholarship, and that's amazing. And then it all just fell apart very quickly. But I didn't lose my love of California. It only kind of grew. And I then sort of, my other great passion was acting. And I got into a number of really amazing drama schools, both in the UK and in the US. The one in the US, kind of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, won out because I wanted so badly to be in California. So I moved to California when I was 18, attended drama school. It was wonderful, incredible experience. And I was there for 4 years. Then I moved back to the UK to act. And it's at that point that I kind of fell into digital marketing. And I think, like you were saying to me earlier before, we started recording, how you kind of found this game through a totally sideways channel.
Totally.
And so did I. So I was a broke actor living in London. And a mate of mine from school called me up one day and he said, listen, come and work with me at this print advertising company. Like flogging ad space, for like $100 a pop. And I did that. And it was horrible. It was a horrific experience. But it was horrific because I realized that as good as the magazine was, and it was very good, it didn't work. X amount of eyeballs, and it was so untargeted. So you needed, for a single sale, you needed X thousand eyeballs on this ad. It was throwing paint against a wall. And I was selling, nonsense to people who really needed it to work. Because our client base, it wasn't like the kind of big multinational companies that my agency now looks after. It was like carpenters and tradespeople.
Who needed the business.
Yeah, they needed it. So I was sat there saying, we're going to get you loads of business. But I think in my heart, even though I wanted it to work for them, I knew that it wouldn't. Yeah.
But you had to sell the product.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Because that's when you have a job, you do your job and you do it to the best of your ability. And I did my job to the best of my ability, but I kind of like slowly withering inside. And I felt like I wasn't conning people. Of course I wasn't. I was doing a job and that's that. But I sort of, a part of me, because I was so disenfranchised with print media, a viable advertising platform, I felt like I did. So I left that and I went traveling around Tibet. And I kind of made this commitment to myself that I would really go back and I would act. And I would also, in order to sustain myself as an actor, I would go and I would work in digital marketing. I didn't know what area of marketing. I was just like, that feels more appropriate. That feels like it might be something that can actually get people really good results. So I leave Tibet, I go back to England, and I read The Art of SEO. Written, we're talking 2010 now. So, Eric Inge and Rand Fishkin and that lot,
I know. Yep.
of our industry.
Yeah.
And I was reading it and I thought, you know what? Sod it. I'm not going to work for someone else. I'm going to work for myself. And I called up one of my best mates from school and I said, listen, dude, I've got this idea. I think that we should open an SEO agency. And he was working for a company called MediaCom, which is one of the huge global advertising agencies at the time. I just assumed he'd tell me to jog on. But he didn't. He said, no, that sounds like a brilliant idea, which completely took me by surprise. And so all of a sudden I had a business partner and a business plan, but neither of us knew how to do this SEO thing that our entire business was based on.
Holy smokes. Okay.
So it was like, okay, wow. So we read the book, we read The Art of SEO. And then we were like, what do we do next? And then that Christmas, in London, Christmas, it gets very cold. And this was a particularly cold winter.
Oh, yeah.
And my boiler was broken. And again, broke actor, freezing my ass off. And
oh my gosh.
I dealt with it for about 7 weeks, and I just weathered the storm. And I was like, I can't afford a new boiler, so I'm not going to. And after about 7 weeks, I was like, no, really, you're cold. You're going to get sick. This sucks. So I called a local plumber. And it turned out to actually be quite a big plumbing company. And I called after hours. It must have been like 8 p.m. And so for whatever reason, the diversion got through to the owner of the company.
Yeah.
And on his website, when I was talking to him, and after about 20 seconds, for whatever reason, it became clear that he was quite senior in the company. So I just thought, all right, well, I can see that his website is basically one giant doorway page, which is an SEO term for like a super spammy area.
Oh, yeah. Most of our audience is agency owners, so they don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so I saw that there's just one giant series of doorway pages. And I mean, literally, he had a website for like London plumbers, another website for Kensington plumbers, another website for Bannon.
Oh, yeah.
Like everything.
There was those were EMDs?
Yeah, exact match domains. So exactly, we're talking 2011. So he probably had 1,000 EMDs with duplicate websites on every single one of them.
He could have just had one. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Except keyword variations for it.
Yeah.
And I said to him, you're going to get in trouble for this.
Yeah.
And he said, why? And I explained why. And then he asked me for a coffee. And I was like, okay, fine. And I went for a coffee with him. And I explained the problem. Yeah. And he looked at me and he said, nah, it's worth 5 years, 6 years, whatever. And that was that. So I was like, okay, fine.
So in other words, so just a minute. He said he brushed you off and said that this is going to last. He's got another 5 years to do what he was doing.
Well, yeah. Well, he said, listen, this strategy has been working for the last however many years. You're full of nonsense. I was like, okay. And I was like, fine. But then literally we're talking 2 weeks later, my phone goes and it's him. And he says, okay, we have just been completely de-investigated.
Annihilated.
Like completely annihilated. It was probably more than 2 weeks. It was probably like 5 weeks. But he was like, we've been completely annihilated. What do we do? And so I was like, oh my God, okay. And so we literally had to then build the agency there. Because we weren't operating at that point. We'd incorporated a few months back, but we had no idea how to start. And all of a sudden we had someone who wanted to be our client with a decent budget and a serious problem. That
is such an amazing story. Like I'm just sitting here going, wow. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, and it was really full on. And I think the benefit of where we came from, because we hadn't, we're talking 2011, 2012 at this point. So kind of height of like Panda, all of these big outputs.
Yeah, I remember all that stuff. Yeah.
But the benefit for Tom and I, my business partner and I, is we hadn't been operating pre-Panda. And we started operating kind of mid-Panda. And so we didn't know how to do SEO in the bad way. We didn't know how to
pre-Panda. Yeah.
We knew that that was wrong SEO, but it wasn't on our registry really of how to do it. We just knew what it looked like. And so we were like, okay, well, let's follow what Rand Fishkin says. Let's follow what Eric says. Let's just see what these guys say. And let's read the guidelines and let's do that. And we did that. And very quickly, this guy started to absolutely dominate again. But based upon really solid SEO strategy.
Yeah. Stuff that adds value.
Yeah, stuff that adds value. And it was all about, as you say, just adding value, creating amazing content, creating really good user experience, like a well-designed website. It's got, this is brilliant. And he, all of a sudden, the traffic that he kind of lost from these thousands of doorway websites that actually ultimately were targeting, like he would have a whole website dedicated to like, I don't know, like Wandsworth plumbers, which would only have like 60 searches a month for it.
Yeah.
And the amount of effort going into every single
thing was
astronomical. We consolidated the whole thing into one awesome website that was actually quite quickly outperforming all of the nonsense that he was doing before.
Wow.
And then he told some of his mates.
And they told some of their mates. Well, they told some of their mates.
Incredibly convenient, because I won't say the name of the agency, but his agency at the time, the SEO agency that was looking after him, was doing these same strategies to like a whole bunch of other agencies. A whole bunch of other companies.
Businesses,
and they all got blacklisted at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And so when then word got out amongst our clients. And so when we started doing a really good job for the guy who was called Charlie, I won't say the name of his company, but when we did a really good job for them, all of a sudden, some of the other clients from this previous agency started calling us up saying, "What are you doing?"
Oh, wow.
And so we got our first 5 clients literally without any effort at all. Just
wow.
Guys who've been mullered by Google just calling us up. And Go Up was born.
Wow. That is such an amazing startup story. I've heard lots of stories, but that's that is so cool. Basically, you poached clients. We didn't even poach them. They left them because they were doing such a bad job. In that, I think it's interesting because EMDs used to work at one time. I know of one marketer who became a millionaire doing pay-per lead generation for service-based businesses in 1 year, launching EMDs that if the EMD like Los Angeles Plumber didn't exist, he just added a 1 to the end of it, LosAngelesPlumber1.com. And he was building those sites and cloning them for multiple cities across the US and multiple verticals. And he became a millionaire. So, it did work at one time, but as you and I know from our experience, you have to add value for SEO nowadays. You can't get away with thin content pages and, rubbish on websites and a crappy user experience where I almost said a different word, but anyway, crappy user experience of slow loading websites that look like they were made in 1997, with tables and columns and all that crap. So it's the game has changed. And, we were talking, it's so amazing how you've really been in the trenches learning SEO, and it's even more, I tip my hat to you that you've built not only an agency up in the UK, but then expanded into the US, which you're, like you said, one of your companies is your US division is located in California because of your love for that. Now I see why. So that's very exciting. We were talking about how to combine SEO with PPC to achieve greater digital marketing success. Can you tell me a story about how you discovered that or how that came about?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're talking our very, very first interaction with SEO. And obviously, look, you learn a million lessons and you learn every single day. Yeah. And it happens that specific question goes back to day one.
Yeah.
Well, we are approached by this guy who gets annihilated by Google. And so the question is, well, how do we get him his revenue back?
Yeah.
And, the obvious answer was, well, look, we need to do, your thing is SEO, right? That's how you've got all of your traction in the past. So we need to get that firing again, but that's going to take time. So how do we get it back now?
Right now.
And to PPC. And so we learned that lesson just because, again, we stumbled upon
necessity.
It. There was this immediate need to get this guy back the traffic that he'd been getting from his SEO campaign. but then on top of that, the kind of synergies that come along with that, because so this guy had been targeting, it said he had thousands of EMBs. And one of the big
hold the phone, just wait a minute. He had 1,000 GMBs?
EMDs, yeah. So he
EMDs. Sorry, I thought you said GMBs, like Google My Business. Did he have a separate GMB for each one of those EMDs?
Funny enough, you touched upon something else, which is, yes, he had a separate Google My Business for every single one of those addresses.
That's crazy, man.
What he'd been doing is he had like virtual offices and mates and all of this in different areas. And so, the code that Google send out to you to your address to verify your local business. Back in 2011, he was just sending it to anybody and everybody, and then just going and collecting it. Yeah. And he loses all of this pretty much overnight. And so one of the first things that we need to do is work out, okay, well, look, of these, however many EMDs he has, which are actually worth, what traffic is worth getting back? And that's where people comes in. Like, not just what has search volume, what is converting for you? Yeah. And so we set up this PPC campaign, and it was a kind of thing of start it big and then narrow it down over the next couple of months. Like start huge catchment, every keyword you can possibly imagine, every version of every keyword within his industry, every location within his industry, and then set up really decent conversion tracking on every single one of those and work out what's actually converting. And that obviously had its own merits within the PPC sense, because you don't want to be wasting, how much ad spend chasing worthless keywords. But it also meant that it laid the foundation for our SEO strategy. And it meant that our SEO strategy, from the moment we started, it was laser focused on the keyword terms that were actually bringing him in loads of revenue. Oh, wow. And so that was that kind of PPC versus SEO lesson, and how those two are, in our opinion, completely interdependent. That was, I totally agree with you. First ever lesson.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Like, when I was back in offering services to businesses, they wouldn't want to do that. Some of them that I come across, they wouldn't want to invest. I said, you know what? If you really want to know what's going to work, let's invest in some PPC. And maybe I was talking to the wrong people, because I was like, we need to invest at least $3,000. Oh my God, $3,000. That's way too much money. I don't have $3,000. Well, you're the wrong prospect for me then. But it's so refreshing to hear someone else validate because like you, I'm self-taught, and I shared my story a little bit off camera. And, it is the right way to go. If you're going to, why bother trying to invest a certain amount of money in something that you're not sure about, whether it's even worth, sure, you can do all the keyword. We both know you can do SEO keyword research and yada, 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 and competitive research and all those things. But like, if you really want to know, is this going to make me money? Is this going to convert for me? Is this going to like move the needle for my business? The PPC is the perfect medium or channel to test that.
You can, something that logically, from a purely organic point of view, you can do all of the research that you want. You can really properly drill down and go down that rabbit hole. You can have a bank of keyword terms that just make absolute logical, perfect sense. And then you build a campaign around them, and you get on the first page, and they're bringing loads of traffic, and they're not converting. Yeah. And everything on paper makes sense, but then the actual hard reality, when it's put in front of a consumer, it's not working for you. And that, we've actually, even though we have a really, really strong kind of mantra of test it on PPC first, we have occasionally not done that. And we've regretted it almost every single time. Oh, wow. Because the learnings that you get from PPC, and you can get those learnings in weeks, and the learnings that you get on PPC can literally save you a year's worth of wasting your time.
Oh my gosh. That is, I wish I could hit the bing thing on my podcast, but it's not set up right now for the right. That is a golden nugget right there, is what I'm trying to say. That you can literally save you, a 1 month or whatever, 30 days, 60 days of PPC research. And not only can it make you money at the same time, but also can save you a year's worth of wasted SEO effort.
100%. And so when you say, your clients, and we get told this as well, when your clients say to you, listen, I don't want to spend $3,000, $5,000, 10 grand, whatever it is, a grand, 500 quid or bucks, whatever it is, PPC, I just want to focus on SEO. But you can spend $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 over the space of a year on one specific kind of sector of SEO related terms of organic related. And as I said, get it, like hit the absolute mountaintops of that and it not convert. And if you had just spent that $3,000 month one on PPC, you would have learned that lesson.
You would have learned that. Do you tell them that?
Yeah. And some people listen and sometimes people don't.
And if those that don't listen, you obviously know that if it doesn't work, they're going to be pissed off at you as a client, or do you just say, I told you so? Or will you do remember when I said this?
Well, look, it's usually when they don't listen, it's usually because you either have I don't want to slag off our business owners because entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of every economy, right? And part of the thing about being an entrepreneur is that usually, you follow your intuition, right? And a successful entrepreneur, the basis of it is that your intuition is right more than it's wrong. But that means that it's going to be wrong a lot of the time. And you just have to hope it's going to be right more than that. And so they will often come to you with this absolute definitive, no, I'm right. This is what we need to be targeting. And when you have that mindset, it's really, really hard to shake that. And as I said, like a lot of the time, actually, logically, all of the indicators are that, yes, that is right. And so it's really, really hard to kind of put a persuasive counter argument against it, because it's like, on paper, that is your demographic, and to target that demographic, those are the right keywords, and this is the right section of the website, and this is good looking, and the UX is perfect, and you've got some decent CRO going on there. So yes, fine, but still test on PPC, and they say, no, I don't have the time, I don't want to waste the budget, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And so it's not like their logic isn't right. It is right. It's just that sometimes the most logical argument doesn't stand up when you actually put the test to it. And so it's not a case of I told you so. It's just a case of, damn.
I hear you.
And I suppose the good thing about that is that they never make that mistake again.
There you go. And hopefully they didn't blame you for it because you...
No, they don't, because, you tell them and you leave a paper trail and they know, and you have a personal relationship with them. And whether it's the business owner themselves or the CEO or the CMO or whoever it is, they learn the lesson and then they never make that mistake again. But it also, every time, it's built confidence in us. Actually, I don't think they've ever come back to us and said, like, I wish you had tried harder to persuade me. Almost every single time they're like, I wish I'd listened to you. And so the next time they do listen to you, which is quite useful.
There you go. So what are some of the ways that you set up tracking, like conversion tracking to, were you setting up goals, obviously, for web forms in analytics and tying that to, and setting up conversion tracking through Tag Manager with Google Ads and, measuring the conversions that way. And I'm assuming, I'm just making assumptions here, call tracking and so on and so forth, in order to measure those conversions. And how did you figure out the keywords that you were bidding on? And were there landing pages that you discovered you needed to build as a result of the keyword campaigns from doing a broad target keyword match campaign like that, where you were targeting almost every keyword that was out there?
No.
Trying to catch as many fish keywords as possible?
So it depends what kind of website you're dealing with. So actually, so your background is in car sales, right? And that's quite interesting. So
I could talk about that for an hour, but I guess tying it back to the plumber, because the plumber was the one who you did it for. So maybe we should stick to that and just, so were you bidding on all those location-based keywords and building the service area pages to land them on, to convert them?
So we had a dual strategy with him. So one of the things that we did was he had this useless internal search engine. And it was completely pointless because, he had this
e-com business.
Yeah, it's on
Yeah.
ecom business. And he had this blog, and it's like, dude, why do you have this internal search engine? But actually, you can learn a huge amount through an internal search engine because you see what people are looking for.
This is true.
And so we kind of had a dual focus there in terms of what kind of sections of the website we would build up. One was literally go through the data of his internal search engine, work out this is what people are looking for over and over and over again.
Okay, shut the front door. You mean to tell me the internal search engine, they were searching for things over and over again, multiple searches, so you were tracking that. And then that led to, oh, wow.
So we were tracking that. And so through his internal search engine, we were working out, okay, well, this is actually, if you want to know what people are if you want to know what services people are looking for, that either you're offering but you're underrepresenting, or you're just not offering yet, but you should be, then let's use your internal search engine for that. And there were actually potential services that we worked out very quickly that his otherwise completely useless part of his website that had no right to exist. And yet it gave us some valuable insight into, okay, well, why aren't you doing this? Because you've got like hundreds of searching for it every single month. It fits squarely within the remit of what a plumber should be doing, and yet you're not offering it. And so we used that and persuade him, first of all, like, this is the data, offer this service. And when he agreed that, fine, I'm going to offer this service, we would then build out a section of his website, specifically geared, and create amazing content specifically geared toward that function. And when you then combine that with the PPC data, so we first of all, we kind of get the concept. We get the concept of this is what people are looking for that you're not servicing. So we then say to him, okay, well, let's just set up a small PPC campaign to see whether that actually converts. And so we just set up like some literally tiny little landing pages on his website per service. And then some of them didn't convert. And so that was like, okay, people are looking for it on your internal search engine. It's not converting. Let's whatever.
Move on.
But then there were other areas where people were looking for an internal search engine. It was converting really nicely in PPC. And so we then build out this, really nicely kind of siloed section of the website. Amazing content specifically. Those search terms, and those really quickly became some of the key drivers of revenue for his entire business. And this was a business that had been around for 15 years and had become one of the genuinely one of the kind of leading plumbing companies in London at the time, which is no small thing.
No, not at all.
Within about a year, we had managed to open up these entirely new revenue streams for him. They were laser focused. I keep saying razor focused. Laser focused. That were driving.
They're both sharp.
That were driving serious revenue for him. All through a combination of data gleaned from his internal search engine and then refined via PPC. So I guess to answer your question, yes, PPC was an absolutely pivotal part of that strategy because we learned what converted and what didn't.
That's amazing. What other things have you learned from PPC that has enhanced SEO campaigns? Like, for instance, creating, using proper, has it been, using PPC for ad copy for meta descriptions? I mean, that sounds like a pretty logical thing to do, but in the reality of it, I mean, does that work?
I would say it works, and it works really, really nicely. So back in, again, going back to the early days, like so 2011, 2012, there was this piece of software called Ad Compactor, where you would
Ad Compactor.
It was like this multivariable A/B testing thing. So you obviously have your standard A/B testing, right? And so you test this ad versus this ad versus this ad. This is all stuff, by the way, that responsive search ads now kind of just do automatically. Yeah. But we're talking, 11 years ago when it didn't. And what it would do is you would kind of take all of the different areas of the ad itself, and then you would take the conversion rates of each ad, and you would, put heading 1, heading 2, etc., all into Ad Compactor, and it would say, okay, actually use this heading, then this line of this description, and that's your golden nugget. And so we would then use that data, and not only use that data to refine our PPC campaigns, we would use that data to write our meta descriptions. And even our meta titles as well.
Because that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and so that's going back, back to the old school. But as I said, these days with kind of how responsive search ads work now, you don't need to use these kind of third-party platforms like AdCompactor. Google does it all for you, and of course, it makes sense, right? If you know that this ad copy and this ad is working significantly better than that, and you know that this is what it's converting, then it makes absolute sense to go and use that as your meta description. And actually, I would say it's criminal not to do that.
Totally. I would totally agree with you. And it's so brilliant.
It's brilliant.
Because then you're really learning the ad copy that's going to convert your visitors when they search organically.
And, I think that meta descriptions is one of, in terms of an industry, it is still one of the most undervalued areas.
I agree with you.
Of the SEO profession, because everyone gets so caught up in what is going to make you rank, which is of course important. But click-throughs, all of this stuff, is an important part of the algorithm anyway. Also, what's the point in ranking if no one's going to convert?
Well, if no one's going to click, what's the point of being number one if nobody's going to click on your result?
No one's going to click on your result. And so actually, this is a fundamental part of our strategy, and we would not be able to get that data without PPC. Obviously there's a little bit of kind of friction between the character counts of, your and your meta descriptions, but that's quite simple to iron that out.
Oh, absolutely.
So the answer is yes. It's, I would say, fundamental to be using the kind of cross synchronicity between the data that you are getting from your ads and then putting that into, I'd say, not just your meta descriptions, as you say, but I would go further than that. And I would say putting that into your title tags and actually putting it into your ad copies, into your actual copy on your
website, your headline.
Yeah, putting your headline, because you are getting all of this data. Why not? If you know it works, use it as your heading one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's bloody brilliant. What about for attribution though? For instance, and I'll set this up. Like, for instance, I don't mean to sound, nobody has taught me what I'm about to tell you. I've thought of it myself, and I've looked at other marketers like Ryan Dice who do it. So for instance, in regards to running ad campaigns, running them on dedicated pages, such as, website.com/landing LP / London plumber, or best London plumber. And then you have your organic page, which could be, website.com / either London plumber direct or service area if you're doing multiple locations / London plumber if you want to do that. So was that a way where you because I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to drive the exact same paid ad traffic unless you're using UTMs. But isn't it better to segment your traffic that way and have different landing pages from PPC versus SEO to because you're always going to be doing split testing on a landing page for PPC. You don't really want it to change on your SEO page. So is that something that you did, or else could you tell me what your strategy was for attribution, for segmentation, for keeping the two channels separate so you know which was working and which wasn't?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, first of all,
did anything I say make sense? I hope it wasn't out to lunch. Okay.
I mean, as we said earlier, attribution modeling in and of itself is a
topic. Yes, of course.
I mean, that's a huge topic in and of itself, and it's a really complicated one, and it's actually one that people get wrong the whole time. I mean, we've just had a client, and actually this isn't unusual, who we've onboarded recently, who has different attribution modeling set up for in AdWords to Google Analytics. And so it means that every single time that they have been looking at their AdWords campaign, they've literally been getting completely different figures to what they've been looking at in analytics, which was a total brain fuzz for the first week of the campaign as we tried to.
So the previous agency didn't do attribution modeling correctly. Its attribution setup was incorrect.
Exactly.
Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah. Yeah, that's not surprising to me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. in terms of how we did it with those, so, okay, my take is that your attribution modeling should be consistent across PPC, across SEO, across all of your channels, because otherwise you're going to run into the minefield of data sets that are telling you different things.
Okay.
And based upon that, I generally, and I think as an agency, we generally go with the mantra that you should be, your SEO landing pages should be your PPC landing pages.
Okay. Fair enough.
Should be your social media landing pages as well. That's not to say that you shouldn't, again, take learnings from PPC. So by all means, set up, and we do this, like set up landing pages specifically geared towards a PPC audience. But for us, that's not a long-term strategy. That's a learning strategy as to like, we should be building out this section of the website for our organic search, and not just search, of course, but users going through the website. Because if we see that something is working really nicely in PPC, that isn't broadly catered to through the main kind of browsable hierarchy of a site, then that should be incorporated into the main browsable hierarchy of a site. Because why wouldn't you? If it's great content, converting well. And so again, it's a really nice, quick way to learn through PPC what content you should be really building out through your site, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. And then you could also use UTM parameters in your PPC campaigns, which you probably are doing, in order to, figure out if the traffic is paid or if it's organic. And then you can look at the channel. So yeah, I can see. My concern was always like, well, what if I'm doing A/B tests and I'm driving traffic to the page and I'm switching these things, but there's ways around that. And like you said, the attribution is a totally, it's a totally topic that we could, and so
get into like floodlight tags and, all of that stuff, which is of course, as said, like brilliant, crucial and critical, and also a dissertation that we can put up for the next 6 years.
Yeah, exactly. So this can be done with like smaller budgets as well. Like, have you done this with like, what's the smallest budget you've done it? If you don't mind me asking, like it's $3,000. Would you say if so here's what I'm trying to get at. And if a company wanted to start doing this, or agencies wanted to suggest start doing this with their clients, what is the smallest PPC ad budget they should think about? Or is it dependent upon the market and the search volume?
That's so interesting, because we are, okay, so if you came to us and said, most of the time, this is such a complicated answer, I don't even know how to answer it. Broadly, speaking, our PPC budgets run in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, right? The budgets that we look after. That said, we've got a couple of clients paying like £300 a month, or, $500 a month. And when we do that, again, it's we're doing that because we are trying to learn something hyper specific for SEO. And so we will sometimes literally, harking back to what we were talking about earlier about testing SEO and PPC first, we can do that maybe with $300, $400 a month. And we'll run a little PPC test. We'll run it over 2 months. We'll see it's working or not. It'll cost them $500-$600. And then if it is, we'll go quid in on SEO. If it's not, we'll scrap it and whatever. So I could say that even if someone is paying you like, tens of thousands of dollars a month on an SEO campaign, you can still save them a fortune by just throwing $300 a month over 2 months into PPC. And learning the hard lessons that way with a really limited budget.
Right now, it's just, I know of so many SEOs who, to be frank, sorry, but they turn their noses up at PPC and kind of like, I don't know if I'm off to lunch here, because, I have talked to thousands of marketers, but like in the Facebook group, it's like PPC is like, it's like they're enemies. They treat PPC like it's an enemy. Like, it's like, no, we're just SEO. All we do is SEO. All we do is SEO. And it's like, shh, I almost swore. Dude, do you know how much you're missing out on by not doing PPC?
I mean, it's not just missing out on, it's the amount of money of their clients' money that they're wasting because they test the principle in its fertile, like laser focused. There you go. I got the word right this time. Like laser focused, like training ground where they can test, or testing ground where they can test their theory before they put it to the. Okay, this is a terrible analogy, and I've never used it before, so it's not particularly robust. But like COVID vaccines, like you start with however many hundreds of different potential vaccines, and we all live this story. We've lived it for the last 2 years, where however many hundred vaccines we knew. There was the Johnson & Johnson one, there was AstraZeneca, there was this, that, and the other, and slowly, the kind of field narrowed down until all of a sudden you're left with like 3 or 4 leading vaccines, and that's when all of a sudden gets a global distribution. Now, had they, instead of kind of narrowing it down like that, just gone absolutely quids in on one vaccine, and it not worked, we'd have all been completely screwed. And I mean, I literally, that analogy, I've never used that before, but
makes sense to me.
The stakes are much, much, much lower, of course, with SEO and PPC. But the point, the point is, why would all of these different vaccines made so much sense on paper and the science worked, and yet you put them through the trials and you throw $1 billion at it and it doesn't work, and it's like, rats. And it is, again, the same with PPC and SEO. It's like, you have this SEO theory. It works amazingly on paper. It looks absolutely perfect. It looks robust. You throw the kitchen sink at it and it doesn't work. And you can learn that within a week. Instead of
son of a gun. Yeah, that is, you got me thinking, because there's some campaigns that I want to launch for SEO that I don't know if they're going to work. So, was there ever a time when the PPC data showed you that it wasn't, like, can you tell a story maybe about a time when the PPC data showed you it wasn't worth doing SEO? Yeah, totally.
So we had, again, I probably can't say the client's name, but
no, don't. Yeah, just in general terms, Acme Motors or whatever you want to say.
So it's an international clothing brand, very famous, kind of very high-end clothing, focusing on men's clothing. And it was a particular style of jacket. And so this was pure testing. So they didn't have this kind of jacket. It didn't even exist.
Oh, it didn't exist.
No, it didn't exist. And it was supposed to be something that they were going to launch the next season. And so we kind of, this wasn't just a case of PPC influencing SEO. This was PPC and SEO influencing their entire brand strategy for their next season's collection. The season that hadn't been created yet collection. And we just caught wind of it incidentally because it was already going to be created. It's just we were kind of going through the strategy, the SEO strategy for the upcoming year. And they said, we're doing this on this day, this on this day, this on this day, this on this day. And we said, okay, well, how do you know that the consumer's going to like this? And they said, because our competitors are doing it. So, of course, they're going to like it. And we've got, X years of being the leading brand in this, and we know about it. And we said, no, you should test this. And so we kind of managed to persuade them to do just that. And it was a, what's the word? When it's pre-order. And so we just kind of
smart.
We kind of put up a pre-order thing because they had the designs already. And so we said, okay. And so we put up landing pages, about 6 different landing pages for, pre-order. Some were jackets, some were shoes, some were shirts. Put it all live, and we didn't SEO, we just PPC'd it. And the conversion, the conversion that we were looking for was people clicking on pre-order and then putting in their details. And the shoes, they were right, worked an absolute dream. Their shirt, they were right, worked an absolute dream. One was a hanky, like a handkerchief, worked an absolute dream. And the other, but this was their, the thing that they were most excited about was this jacket. It was kind of bomber jacket type thing. And our suspicion was that it wouldn't work on the basis that these guys, they're kind of, what they were known for was much more classic. And, that was the whole point. They wanted to go for something much more edgy.
Okay. But it wasn't their brand. It wasn't a brand market fit.
It's not on brand. And anyway, we set up this whole thing and we put PPC. They didn't have a single conversion. Not a single
wow.
clicked. A lot of people clicked on it. Like they got a whole bunch of clicks to the actual page, but not a single person clicked the pre-order button. And they because of it.
Otherwise, they were going to go ahead with the product and they were going to go ahead with an SEO campaign.
They were going to go ahead with the product. They were going to go quids in with us. So we lost ourselves a bunch of revenue because they were going to go quids in with us. We probably lost, maybe £80,000 worth of work because they were going to embark on this major SEO push for this particular product.
Oh, wow.
But ultimately, we gave them the right information, and probably by spending like £400, which is again about $600, they saved themselves about £80,000 just in SEO alone, let alone the production costs of this jacket that was never going to sell across all of all the stores that they have internationally. And so you're literally talking under $1,000. They saved themselves without exaggerating well over $1 million. Well over $1 million if you take into account the SEO costs, the production costs, the distribution costs, everything. Well over $1 million just by
is
test.
Unbelievable.
Which is great.
That's an amazing story.
Which is great. And actually, ultimately, yes, we lost probably 80 grand's worth of revenue from that, but we got a serious amount of goodwill from them. And they're still a client.
Yeah. So that's amazing. Hey, is there any other ways businesses can use PPC data to improve their SEO strategy that we haven't mentioned that come to the top of your mind?
Oh my God. I mean, I'm sure that there are a million ways that they can use their SEO strategy. Off the top of my head, I mean, to be honest with you, I think we've covered the bases. And
if we've covered the bases, I just thought maybe there's one more thing that might come to your mind, a golden nugget or maybe an inspirational idea that maybe have come to your mind that you're like, oh yeah, there's this one more. I was just trying to squeeze a little bit more value out of you. Sorry.
I'm sure that there will be as if the conversation goes on. Yeah. Ultimately, though, those are the headlines, and anything else is just like subtle refinement. Yeah. Where you're kind of constantly checking back the SEO data versus the PPC data. And again, just seeing what converts.
Do you continue to, like, when you get the pages ranked, do you continue to do both PPC and SEO?
Okay, so firstly, it depends entirely upon the client. I would say that most of our clients have both SEO and PPC budget.
That's right.
So most of them, do both. Not all of them. A lot of, I say most, when I say most, we're maybe talking 55% versus 45% who don't. Okay. Even the 45% who don't, again, we try to persuade them to test SEO in PPC before they go quids in. And so the ones who aren't engaged in kind of long-term, multifaceted PPC campaigns, we will still try to do small PPC campaigns to make sure that we're really kind of getting, that we're on the money, we're onto something before we roll it out on a major SEO scale.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. What's one big takeaway you want listeners to get from this episode?
Oh my gosh. I guess just, you can have a hunch, right? And hunches are good, and you should always go with your hunches. But the beauty about what we do is that you have the bigger picture and the small picture. And I would say PPC paints a small picture beautifully, and then you roll it out on the big picture.
On the canvas.
You roll it out on the canvas. So
wow.
Why would you ignore this machine, this mechanism that gives you these most incredible detailed, pinpoint insights? Why would you ignore that? Why would you discard that? Because ultimately that's what helps you paint your masterpiece. And it's also revenue for your clients. What gives clients the best conversion. So if you can say to them, listen, I mean, that story, I nearly said the brand name a second ago.
Yeah. Well, we would edit it out.
that story of the clothing brand, like by, you know, probably less than $1,000, saving them $1 million just
that is
really,
amazing.
And it's easy. And the take home could be, oh, well, you screwed yourself out of a major SEO campaign. But actually, the reality is we bought major brand loyalty from a client.
Oh, absolutely.
Constantly increase their spend with us every single year because we make sure that we don't waste their money. And ultimately, if you can be the kind of agency that doesn't just see a major budget and think, let's just throw paint against the wall, see what sticks. Let's actually make sure that we are spending their money really, really, really wisely. That's the best return on investment for your clients. And that's how you build long-term clients who keep on increasing their spend with you because they trust you, because you're the agency that does that when no other agency does. And by the way, it's weird that most agencies don't do that.
Oh,
that's weird.
Yeah. And I won't talk too much on camera, but yeah, I've seen things. So
yeah, we all have, right? Like,
I've seen things that even recently I saw something that just blew my mind away that I'll tell you about off camera. But anyway, how can listeners connect with you online?
So I check out my LinkedIn quite regularly.
LinkedIn, okay.
I check my email very regularly. Ed at GoUp.co.uk. I'm
cool.
happy to say that because I like receiving emails from that. I find it really interesting.
Right on.
I would say that that's kind of the main thing. I also float
LinkedIn and email.
We touched on earlier our LA office. So I said the background story because that's ultimately when we decided that we need an American office. California makes sense because of my background there. So I'm there in California.
That makes so much sense.
Very often in London as well. So, you know, people want to hit me up in either. I love meeting people. I find it fascinating to talk to other people in our industry because, you know, that kind of increase your knowledge base, right? Part by practical experience and the other part by hearing the stories of other people and implementing it.
Yeah. Well, I've learned lots today, and I just want to thank you for being on the show and being here. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure having you. And thanks for telling our audience how they connect with you. And I hope you'll come back and we can talk about some other things.
No, that's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you very much. You have a great day.
You too.